Hey Crispy, love the show. I've been watching for a while, and I remember the story from when I first started playing that I wanted to share. My family's always been very nerdy, and I grew up watching my parents play D&D with their friends. And I'd always talk about how much I wanted to play and how fun it seemed. Eventually, their DM said I was starting a new game, and that he'd let me play if I wanted since my parents were already going to join. I can't remember if there was a session 0, but I do remember that there were at least 8 players. Oh my god. Also, only one other person at the table was even close to my age. The DM was super nice and really cool and ended up really catering a lot of the game towards me. I think because I was the most excited, and the fact I thought he was the coolest dude ever probably didn't hurt. The DM was a massive anime fan and ended up taking a lot of things from different anime and putting them in the game, and this really irritated my mom. She likes her games to be more moody and edgy, I guess, because she was always playing a rogue with a horrible, tragic backstory that hates everyone. So she wasn't having a lot of fun in this, and she would complain about everything. Oh my god, your mom's an edgelord?
Hey Mom, getting ready to do my chores. Is there anything else you need? Oh, don't worry about me, honey, just do your chores. Mother's working on a self-insert fan fiction where all of my children have been brutally murdered!
Hey, no judgment here. My mom apparently was an edgelord too, when she was an accountant. The edgiest job. She never actually talked to the DM to tell him she wasn't enjoying the game though, just complain on the way home and say how terrible it was or how much she hated the things the DM was doing. It all culminated one night when the DM was admittedly railroading us and had some NPCs kidnap everyone's characters and force them into an anime-style tournament arc. I, of course, was super excited, and everyone else seemed at least interested, except my mom. She was furious that we were being railroaded like that and made it everyone's problem. She had her character demand to be released, and when the people running the tournament said no, her rogue slit her own. Needless to say, this ended the session. I was downright horrified. The DM asked her, why did she do that? And she only responded with, it's what my character would do. She hates being forced to do things because of a tragic backstory. After that night, we stopped going to sessions and eventually stopped seeing those friends. And that's how my first ever real D&D campaign ended. Man, can't say I've ever seen an edgelord mom. Seriously though, railroading sucks, but if the rest of the party are all really having fun with it, try just going along with it a little bit because you might be missing out on something. My Curse of Strahd campaign. Oh my goodness.
Why is it when something happens, it is always you three?
Believe me, Professor, I've been asking myself the same question for 6 years.
Yeah, anyway, it ended a few months ago, and I decided to take a break as the Forever GM to rest and recover before starting a new campaign with my group. About 2 weeks into the break, I tested my luck with Roll20's LFGs. Seriously, it's like clockwork, guys. Anyway, yeah. I went to Roll20's LFG to try and get into an interim game before my new campaign starts. I found a Dragonlance game that advertised that it would be nearing its end, so I just needed to fill in a gap after a player dropped out. I figured there's no harm in applying. The worst that can happen is being ignored. Lo and behold, I actually got a response. The DM sent me a message to do an interview on Discord to see if I'd be a good fit. We set up a time, I showed up, and to be clear, I'm transgender, and I use a female name, but my voice is like real masculine. Nothing I can do about it. The DM comes on the call, and I say, hello. Girl name? Yeah, that's me. I know what I sound like. Maroon flag, but I get it. It was unexpected. He proceeds to cover a basic rundown of the history of the Kryn, the current state of the campaign, and what I want to play. He mentioned that this campaign has been plagued by dropouts, and he's just trying to keep it going for one of his close friends who was in it from the start. I asked, since he's got so few people, if I could bring a friend that I always play with. I told him that me and my friend were always forever DMs, so our only opportunity to be players is in each other's game, so the chance to play together can't be passed up. He meets my friend and approves of both of us. He approved of my character concept right away, an evil, halfling, noble death cleric, archaeologist who's trying to use historical evidence to prove the nobility's empirical right to rule. Kryn doesn't use half-elves, they use the Kender instead, but I asked if I could be like a first-generation halfling from elf and dwarven parents, their canonical origin in D&D. He agreed pretty much right away, but gave me an alternate motivation. He said my god asked me to kill Lord Soth, since I made a death cleric who wants to stump out the undead, whom she viewed as an affront to the natural cycle of death. It felt a little off to give me a goal that's based entirely off a secondary trait and not take note of her primary task of circular logicking the nobility's right to rule, but you know what, I went with it. He mentioned how he was looking forward to how my god tries to tempt mortals with immortality, secretly by turning them into undead slaves. Kind of ignored how that flies in the face of her view of death being natural.
I despise the vile undead and seek their destruction in all realms. Well, hark! Some vile undead approach. Let us destroy them with our... Oh, wait, no, not those guys, though. Dude, what? Yeah, those guys are cool undead. Dude, what? You said you hate all undead. Like, I'm glad you got some nuance about it, but, like, I feel like this is a walk back, you know? Yeah, but, like, you know, it's a complicated thing, you know? You gotta pick and choose sometimes. Like, some of these undead, I even took as my lover. Hey, what'd you do that for? I refuse to hear the end of that sentence!
My friend's character was a completely different story. He asked for the allowed races and wanted to run a tiefling, which was already approved. He had to argue with the DM for days, though, to get a standard horn tiefling, as the DM wanted him to be human passing at first, and said he would have a hard time working a tiefling into Kryn. Eventually he agreed, and my friend ran an evil tiefling sorceress, Novice of the Black Robe. We finally get to game day, and me and my friend are there on time. 10 minutes later, the DM comes in. We're still waiting. 10 minutes later, and one of his 3 remaining players come in. After a full half an hour late, the DM asks what we want to do and starts an introduction session between us. My halfling and my friend's tiefling come across a ruined tower after a battle and start to investigate. We stumble upon the main party, and the ranger is very untrustworthy of us, being a cleric draped in black and a tiefling draped in black. I mean, come on, what's untrustworthy about edgelords? They're always so nice! We RP for a little bit, but Ranger is unconvinced to team up, and is saying out of character how he wishes the bard were there to handle this. We break after like an hour, and the DM says he's gonna check in with everyone for next week. The next day, the Ranger leaves a message in the Discord that he's dropping out too. At this point, the DM is talking about restarting the campaign from scratch, but that's not what I signed up for. I wanted just like an in-between game between my own campaigns, so starting a new one just wouldn't work for me. I apologized for this and left the server. I feel bad because the guy really knew his lore in his game world. This seems to be the way of campaigns, though. One player leaves, the floodgates open, before you know it, the whole party's gone. He seemed like a good DM, and I would love to try my evil archaeologist in a full campaign at some point. But anyway, I'm looking forward to the future. You know, based on that opening, I expected this one to get way more transphobic. And it didn't. I think that's worth celebrating! Yeah! Woo! No transphobia! Woohoo! Low bar. I think there's a couple problems with this DM's approach. First and foremost, I totally get this DM's mind when it comes to picking hills to die on in your lore. Like, this DM wants human-like tieflings. A lot of people aren't gonna like that. I don't like that, but this DM apparently does. However, I got plenty of lore quirks in my world that not everyone's gonna like, but they're part of my world that I'm not gonna budge on. But you have to be aware that there's gonna be a consequence of that kind of mentality. I'm sure there are plenty of people who would not want to play in my game because of my lore, and that's okay. I don't play with those people. But this DM is desperate for players and is still picking hills to die on that probably aren't worth it if you want people to play in your game. Look, people have left my campaigns before. It doesn't result in all of my friends bailing, though, because, frankly, my games are good. My friends like what we do there, and therefore, they stay, even when someone leaves. I'm not saying this DM is god-awful, they're just not good enough to stick around for. Crispy, I have caught up to your horror story backlogs twice over? Oh my god, the idea of someone listening to my voice for that long is just... Oh my lord, how much time do you have, man? But anyway, thanks. I feel like I can trust your opinions on my story. I collected a lot of them, starting with Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition and taught by my parents who played AD&D. So, I've been doing this for 20 years. So here's an appetizer one to start. So back in high school, I was trying to figure out my particular game master style. I had a core group of refugees from another group, my first really bad GM, and we were rapidly burning out. 5 different game systems and 12 different campaigns turned out, and a few half shots later, I was scrolling the OSR blog when I ran across my ultimate GM weapon. Ask your players what they like to do, and then prep that. Whoa, what a crazy trick. Not even Matt Koval could conjure this ability. I'm kidding, it's a good thing to learn. So I got the nerds together to pitch a campaign idea and did the old bait and switch and tricked them into telling me what they were feeling like playing. One of them, Sloth, said they wanted to be a king. Okay, sure. The other players got really into creating Sloth's personal advisors and bodyguards. We picked Pathfinder 1st edition, which was actually my infant garbage fire edition, as the game, and we all jointly designed a Middle Eastern palace where Sloth would be coronated as the king. And then the session just kind of happened. Sloth immediately went to do things with his... What is this? Is he just making you listen to him bone a bunch of fake
Forced to mind the door while your king eats and drinks and shits and fucks.
He ordered his personal guard and advisors to stand watch, and they did, ignoring every single plot hook. And there were a lot of them to interact with. Calls from the king to speak to his heir on his deathbed, nobles seeking the crown prince's favor, suspicious palace guards doing drills, slimy younger siblings wanting a word with their brother, royal spies with urgent messages for the crown prince's ears only, all ignored, drowned out in dice rolls trying to figure out various mechanics from the book of... I'm not saying that out loud, for 3 straight hours. It finally reached the point where the only logical thing that could happen did. Royal guards kicked down the door, grabbed the prince to save him from the same fate the king had just faced. There was a coup underway, and the youngest prince was successfully seizing power. A grueling running battle was waged, ending with Sloth and his retinue barely alive, fleeing the city and hiding in the first village they found. Honestly, the story of a crown prince failing to stop a coup because he was too busy. It's kind of a good story. Look, we ended the session there, with me asking what they wanted to do next, ready to take notes. Instead, Sloth started whining. That came out of nowhere. That was some BS. I was supposed to be king, you promised. Why would you take that away from me? What was I supposed to do? That was unfair. Sloth then said the campaign was stupid and didn't want to play anymore, right before asking me what I wanted to run next. Pro tip for you guys. If you want your DM to run something for you, don't call them stupid beforehand. Man, it sucks because I was wondering how you were going to handle one of the players being king when the answer was obvious. The player isn't going to be king for long. However, while the shock of that plotline is awesome, a plot where you are a king managing a throne and a kingdom is very different from a plot where you're a runaway prince. I would just tell the player straight up, look, you're gonna be the royalty, but you're not gonna be royalty for long. This campaign's about adventuring, not about kingdom management. I think that lack of communication would have doomed this game, even if Sloth was a good player, which I don't think they are. Kinda comes with the territory on high school games. Again, I love the concept of this, and it could have gone great, but I think a little bit of communication may have saved it. You know, maybe. I'm a long-time viewer, but it's my first time submitting a horror story. This happened about a year ago. I've always loved Dungeons & Dragons, and I've been playing it since I was fairly young. However, I rarely get to be a player. Yeah, I'm the forever DM. It isn't a bad thing, but I do often just want to experience playing the game rather than world building and managing everything on the back end of adventures. It just so happened my chance to join a brand new campaign arose when I found a group of players who I was friends with in a 5M server. Grand Theft Auto 5 roleplay, it's niche and not for everyone. I mean like roleplaying in GTA 5 online? Cause like, it's not so niche that I haven't heard the horror. But, you know, I'm sure you're fine. We even had someone who was willing to be the dungeon master, so I would actually get a chance to be a player. I was really excited for that. At first, everything was decent. The DM was excited, held a session 0 explaining that we would have sessions once a week and how it was super important that we got our backstories in before the start of the first session. I'm thinking, great. He is going to take time and read all the backstories and come up with interesting ways to weave them into the world. I gave him too much credit, but I wouldn't realize that until several sessions later. Our group was big. We had a dwarven monk, an Eladrin bard, an ASMR cleric, a fairy rogue, an Eladrin rogue, myself, a blood hunter, and a merfolk druid. To me, that's just too large of a group to manage, but I wasn't the DM, so I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I was a fool. Yeah, you were. Seriously. Less adventurers means better DMing! Okay, maybe not for everyone, but at least for me. Normalize smaller groups. This especially became clear when he invited 2 more players later on down the line. You will get to those when they show up. Like I said, the game started off decent, but quickly we all noticed there was a lack of actual roleplay. It was mostly just him narrating at us and rather underwhelming battles. Everything felt disjointed, rushed, or just not at all planned. Other times, it felt completely too planned, and a bit like we were just sitting there listening to him read us a story that he wrote. Then, there would be times where he would stop the session after he would go on a long monologue and wait to see if anyone gave him praise for his voice acting or the mind-blowing revelations he dropped on us. A few of the players would stroke his ego, but I mostly sat muted in the Discord call, waiting to see if we would actually be able to interact with each other or NPCs in any way. I realized things were getting worse when he started paying more attention to the Blood Hunter and the Fairy, favoring their characters over others and giving them special treatment, special items, or far more time interacting with him directly, which in turn took away from the group as a whole when it came to making choices. The first player to drop out was the merfolk druid. She was super sweet, but she was really just not enjoying herself, and I couldn't blame her. The DM ended up just killing her character. It was during this battle where we were trying to save the merfolk that issues became more apparent to the group. My character, Vim the rogue. Vim? I mean, come on, epic fantasy names. Arthas, Lae'zel, Vim? What, did your mom do a typo? Okay, my name is Crispy. I really shouldn't judge. Yeah, Vim, the rogue, me, tried to pick the lock that bound the merfolk to this sacrificial altar. Well, it turns out that lock for some reason was cursed, and my character ended up basically becoming a puppet for this elder god in order to free the merfolk. It turned out it was basically a trap, and instead of freeing her body, the elder god basically freed her soul from her corporeal form. That's a generous way to say kill her. None of us knew the merfolk had talked to the DM and told him she was leaving the group, so we were all putting in all of our effort to save her. When it got to the fairy's turn, the DM changed the background music and began to use his voice changer, and he was in the fairy's head, so none of us knew any of this was going on. This was clearly the big bad of the campaign. We knew this because it wasn't the first time we spoke to this guy, but little did we know the big bad evil guy was also using the fairy as a vessel. This whole time, he had reached out to her to grab the merfolk's soul and capture it. So basically, the merfolk was living in the fairy's head. Okay, that's neat. After that session was over, the DM messaged me and told that he would be doing something to my character sheet for the next session, and we would discuss it further then. I didn't really give it that much thought, and when the time came, I took a look at my character sheet, and what did I discover? I was now multi-classed into Warlock. That wasn't how I saw my character going at all, and was practically pretty annoyed that he had decided to surprise me by having this elder god be my patron. Now, I'm a good sport. I tend to roll with things and give several chances to people, even though this isn't what I wanted or planned for my character, but I just went along to see how it would go. No harm in that, right? I was very wrong on that. More sessions come and go. Sometimes we have fun, sometimes it's lackluster, and we all end up irritated to some degree because Blood Hunter and Fairy really seem to get all the attention from the Dungeon Master, and everyone else just sits muted and listens. It's just boring. However, suddenly we find ourselves where the DM decides to give the ASMR cleric a bit more focus. In her backstory, she thought she was the last of her kind, and she was raised by a church of humans. She's never met another of her kind before, but the DM decided to retcon her backstory without telling her. Seriously, stop doing that.
Oh, God. Where'd you even come from? From the eldritch, unspeakable void of our cloning chamber? But anyway, yeah, what are you doing with my backstory? I gave it to you a while ago. Oh, I'm just completely tearing your entire backstory apart and replacing it with a story of my own, because I really don't care about anything that you do and really just want to do my own thing with this game and don't really care about your agency or your input or... Hello? Hello? What? Oh yeah, nothing. I'm not doing anything. Are you sure it's nothing? Because you've been staring at me for like 5 straight seconds. Nothing! Okay.
He introduced her mentor as another ASMR that trained her but went missing on a pilgrimage. Needless to say, our cleric was confused, but did her best to just go along with it. The DM also introduced another ASMR, this one a paladin. Oh, really selling the last of your kind fantasy. Yeah, this paladin was overly familiar with our cleric and clearly showed signs of romantic interest after just knowing her for a few hours. It gave creepy "we need to repopulate" vibes that no one liked, especially cleric and myself, as we had planned somewhere down the line to have our characters possibly have a romantic interest, but the fact is we never got to roleplay it, and that made this romance plot really hard, and DM was aware we were discussing that plot point out of character too. Needless to say, the DM continued trying to get this NPC to woo the cleric, but she just wasn't interested and even hid behind my character when the paladin attempted to kiss her knuckles. Later that night, our characters were back on the ship and everyone was in their cabin resting while the blood hunter was role-playing with the DM. Then, I heard my character's name and I focused because I thought he was asking me a question, but no, he was actively playing my character without me. And this is after he told me that if my character was ever like possessed by the Elder God, I would be in control of my character. He would just like guide me on what he wanted me to do. Instead, he did the creepiest thing ever, had my character sneak into the cleric's cabin and become extremely... You're phrasing that in a very particular way. Is it what I think it is? I won't go into details, but what he did was awful, and it only felt as if the reason he did it was to make the cleric hate my character. There was no assault, thank God. Yeah, thank God. But it was still extremely uncomfortable, and I felt like if he wasn't stopped, it would go in that direction. So I unmuted and I just went, "Hey bud, what the hell?" I want to add our whole group, except for the DM, was female, and me opening my mic gave the other ladies enough courage to do the same. He was verbally ripped to shreds and backpedaled on what had just happened. It was also quick and gave me whiplash. He apologized, retconned the scene, and we just ended the session there. It was a while before we played again. I think everyone was disappointed in him, but couldn't bring themselves to fully walk away. I know I was irritated and disgusted, but I also still just wanted to play with my friends. We as a group had a big ol' sit down and talked about comfort levels and basically everything we discussed during session 0. This was around the same time he decided to add 2 more players to the group, a drow blood hunter and honestly, I don't know. It was some kind of homebrew race in class with the other guy. It was a big dog humanoid who could use smite and divine magic. Well, smite and divine magic. Good thing we can rule out paladin for this mystery homebrew class. I mean, no idea what it could be, guys. As a group, we had no idea these 2 brand new people were joining us until the day of the session, and they were added to the Discord and the call after he made their introductions. He had been streaming to them so that when it was time for them to show up, they would know what was going on and we would all be surprised. And yeah, we were surprised. As things were, people already weren't getting enough interaction. When combat happened, it would take up to an hour to do a single round. I remember a few players falling asleep mid-combat just because it took so long to get to our turns. There would be times I could go downstairs, cook dinner, and come back up before it was even close to my turn in combat again. Adding more players to the mix just made things unbearable. The final straw for me personally was when he revealed the drow was my character's half-sister. If I had some sort of backstory that would allow for that, it would have been fine. However, my character's backstory was very solid in the fact that she came from a loving home. Her parents were extremely doting with each other, and her father would never cheat on her mom. It was a slap in the face for him to just toss that aside, act like he knew my character better than I did. Look, sometimes as DMs, you just take someone's like loving parents, just bloop, plop them out, and then put in, yeah, cheating on your wife. Woo! At this point, I think everyone was tired just sitting in a call for several hours once a week and listening to some audiobook where we get to roll dice sometimes. Shortly after I left, the whole campaign fell apart, and people just stopped showing up. I'm back to being the forever DM. I've just been running a homebrew Fallout campaign for the last 9 months. I knew it wasn't the worst horror story, but it was certainly the most frustrating I've had in D&D in ages. Thanks for letting me share. Keep it crispy, Playgrat. I kind of like that, but in any case, yeah, this DM sucks. First and foremost, you need to be aware of how many people you can have in your games. I said it during this story, I say it all the time, but I think people need to normalize smaller groups. For the vast majority of DMs, having a group above 5 players is not necessary and more of a pain than it's worth. If you have a big group and you handle it fine, that's good for you. But for the majority of DMs, it's just not worth it. Also, favoritism. Favoritism just sucks. You see the worst kinds here, where favorites get tons of attention, tons of interaction, tons of magic items, and you get nothing. But on the other hand, we also see how favoritism can get creepy. Look, even as an Arrow Ace guy, I know how exciting romances can be. If you've watched the 10th Tomb actual play, you know that me and Fall Cosplay, we did a little romance, and it was cute. But God, if it goes in this direction, I wouldn't blame her if she never talked to me again. Can't let your excitement turn you into a freaking weirdo, okay? Just act normal, and trust me, everything's gonna go way better for you, alright? Hey, that's a wrap. If you guys enjoyed, then you may enjoy an episode from last year that's getting a lot of traction about a pick-me girl who thought her D&D marriage was real. It's linked in the cards and at the end and in the description. But before you go, please do leave a like on this one and subscribe to Crispy's Tavern so you don't miss any of our content as it comes out. And finally, if you want to leave your own stories or thoughts, go down in the comments down below. If you can't think of a comment, leave the comment, "I'm the king," to let me know you made it to the end of the video. Hey, by the way, if you have your own horror stories, you can send them directly to us. There's an email down in the description down below. Send your stories our way for a chance to be featured in one of these videos. But hey, even if you don't have any stories, in essence, like, comment, subscribe. I will see you all next time. Farewell.
Dude, what? You said you hate all... What? What? You said you hate all... Yeah, I'm glad you have some subtlety about it.